That Tuesday afternoon, the city buzzed outside my office window as I wrapped up my last meeting of the day. The office was quiet, humming with fluorescent lights and the soft tap of fingers on keyboards. I was organizing case files when my phone vibrated. Unknown number. Normally I'd ignore it, but something about the area code made me pause. Chicago local. "Hello, this is Emma Carter," I answered, still flipping through a folder. A voice on the other end replied, polite but clipped. "Ms. Carter, this is Brad Coleman from Horizon First Bank. I need to verify some details regarding a mortgage application." I frowned. "A mortgage application?" "Yes," he continued. "It's for a property on 1370 West Glenwood Drive. You're listed as a co-signer." I stopped breathing for a second. "Excuse me? That's not my property. I never applied for any mortgage, especially not in that name." Brad paused. "I understand this is unexpected, but the application lists you as the co-signer. The primary applicant is a Madison Carter. Your sister, correct?" A chill ran down my spine. The folder in my hand slipped and hit the floor. "That has to be a mistake," I said slowly. "I've never signed anything for Madison. Not a mortgage. Not anything." "I understand, ma'am. But this loan was processed 7 months ago. Your signature appears on every official document. In fact," his voice dropped slightly, "your parents delivered the paperwork to our branch in person." It felt like the ground shifted under me. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the name, Glenwood Drive, scribbled on the notepad I kept by the phone. I had been there once for a holiday party. Madison had bragged about the granite countertops and how the house was a steal. I'd asked how she'd afforded it. She'd smiled but never answered. My thoughts raced. Images flashed through my head. My mom nervously avoiding eye contact during Christmas dinner, my dad pushing a small stack of insurance renewal forms in front of me during his birthday party saying, "Just sign these real quick, Em. It's just health stuff." I remembered not even reading them. I pressed my fingers to my temple, trying to hold the pieces together. "Mr. Coleman, I want digital copies of every document with my name on it. Immediately." "Of course. I'll email them to you within the next 10 minutes, he replied. Then his voice dipped into something heavier. "Also, the loan is in default. Over 2 months of missed payments. The current delinquency balance is $32,400. And if it's not settled soon, foreclosure proceedings will begin." I didn't answer. I couldn't even register the numbers. $32,000. My name. My license. My career. Brad's voice faded into the background as I hung up and stared blankly at my monitor. Then with shaking hands I dialed the only person I knew who could handle something this insane. Alex Monroe, my best friend since law school and a civil attorney who didn't scare easily. He picked up on the first ring. "Emma. They forged my signature," I whispered. "Madison. My parents. All of them." Alex didn't ask for details. "I'll be there in 15. When he arrived, I had already received the email. We opened the PDF together. There it was, page after page of paperwork, my name printed cleanly beneath signatures I hadn't written. Except one detail screamed louder than all the rest. The little loop at the end of the A in Emma. It was identical to my mother's cursive. She always made that dramatic curl like she was signing a love letter. Alex leaned forward, his jaw tightening. "They didn't even try to disguise it properly. This is fraud. Straight up criminal." I nodded, but I couldn't stop my hands from trembling. My phone buzzed again. I stared at the screen, silent. "Answer it," Alex said gently. "Try to stay calm." I took a long breath and pressed accept. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was syrupy sweet. "Hi, sweetheart. Are you free tonight? Your dad's making your favorite spaghetti and meatballs." I almost laughed. The audacity. "Perfect," I said flatly. "Because I have something interesting to talk about. Horizon Bank called." Silence. Then a stammer. I was going to tell you, soon. Really. It was just, Madison needed help. And you're doing so well. So your solution was to forge my name? On a $450,000 loan. You're overreacting, Emma. We're family. Families help each other." I stared at the phone, jaw clenched. Help each other? Or just help Madison? I didn't say another word. I just hung up. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my apartment back against the kitchen cabinets, the PDF from Horizon Bank open on my laptop, its glow flickering like a silent accusation in the dark. Each time I reread the documents, it felt like a fresh slap across the face. They hadn't just lied. They'd stolen my identity. And for what? A house Madison couldn't afford? A loan she never intended to repay? By 6 a.m. I was already dressed in gray slacks and a navy blazer, my war paint. I needed to do more than panic. I needed to protect myself, my career, my license. Alex met me at his office downtown. He looked like he hadn't slept either. I stayed up reading the entire file, he said, motioning me into the conference room. Emma, they didn't just forge your signature. They submitted an entire borrower profile under your name. Employment verification, income estimates, even a credit pull authorization. All fake. My jaw tightened. And the bank didn't flag it? No, because it was convincing, terrifyingly so. They used your law firm as the employer, forged an HR contact, even input your bar license number in the financial disclosures. It wasn't just lazy forgery. They planned this. I felt cold all over. So, what are my risks? Alex hesitated. Emma, one of the documents they submitted, it's a personal credit guarantee. That means you're on the hook legally if Madison defaults. And she has. I sank into the chair. That's not the worst part, he continued. If this is ever linked back to you without absolute proof of forgery, the state bar could accuse you of financial misconduct, falsifying personal statements, non-disclosure of conflict of interest, fraudulent activity. You could be disbarred. Those words echoed louder than anything else. Disbarred. Everything I'd built. Every hour I'd poured into my career. Gone. How the hell am I supposed to prove I didn't sign these? I asked. Alex clicked on the screen. Here's where it gets interesting. The signature itself. On page 12. It looks like yours, but see this. He zoomed in on the final swoop of my name. The loop on the A. This isn't how you write it, but it's how your mom does. I pulled up the birthday card she wrote you last year. Same dramatic curl. Same ink stroke pressure. I stared at it. He was right. She copied your signature, Alex said, but couldn't help adding her own little flair. And that could be the thread we pull. My stomach turned. So my own mother couldn't resist making it look pretty? She made it look like you, but not quite. That might save you. Alex sat back. We need to act fast. First, notify the Bar Association that your identity was used without consent. Get ahead of it before the bank reports the delinquency. Then we file a fraud affidavit with Horizon. And next, we file a police report. I swallowed hard. A police report? Against my family? He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The silence said it all. I nodded. Do it. He looked at me quiet for a second. Are you sure? They stole my identity, I said, voice low. They forged my signature. They risked my entire career. Yeah, I'm sure. Before I left, Alex handed me a printed copy of the documents. Keep these. Emma, I know it's hard, but right now you have to think like a lawyer, not a daughter. I nodded, clutching the folder to my chest like a shield. That evening, I received an email confirmation from the State Bar acknowledging my disclosure. It was official. I'd placed myself under preemptive review, something most lawyers dread like the plague. But I couldn't afford not to. If they found out through Horizon's channels, it would look like a cover-up. This way at least I was in control of the narrative. Or so I hoped. But things unraveled faster than I expected. 2 days later, I received a letter from a collections agency, $32,400 overdue in default and legally collectible. The notice had my full name, my social security number, my law license ID. They tied everything to me. And then came the final blow. Alex called at 9 p.m., voice tight. Emma. I dug a little deeper. There's something else you need to see. It's not just the mortgage. I froze. What? There's a secondary document filed a few months back. It's a financial disclosure related to your 401k. Your parents applied for a secondary line of credit, using your retirement account as collateral. They claimed you'd authorized the lien. But there's no such paperwork from your end. I stared at the wall, heartbeat thudding in my ears. They used my retirement. How would they even? Then I remembered. Last year. Tax season. Mom insisted on helping with my paperwork because I was swamped with cases. She said, "Just forward me your plan details, sweetie, I'll plug them in for you." I didn't think twice. I felt sick. Alex's voice was firm. "We're dealing with multiple counts of identity theft now. Mortgage fraud. Financial exploitation. Possibly elder law violations if they used your grandmother's info too." I'm still digging. I didn't speak. Couldn't. I just sat on the floor, hands shaking while my entire foundation crumbled beneath me. The phone didn't ring the next day. Not from Madison. Not from my parents. Not even a text. After everything, they were just quiet. Like they were waiting for me to cool off, sweep it under the rug and move on like always. I didn't. Instead, I got in my car and drove. Their house looked the same. Beige siding. Carefully trimmed hedges. The wind chime I gave my mom for Mother's Day last year still hung on the porch, tinkling like nothing had changed. But everything had. When she opened the door, she smiled like we were about to have coffee. "Sweetheart, I was going to call you. We've been so busy. Come in. Your father's out back." I didn't smile. "We need to talk." Her face flickered, but she stepped aside. "Of course." We sat at the kitchen table. The smell of fresh pasta filled the air. Spaghetti and meatballs. My dad's favorite. Mine too once upon a time. "So," she said, folding her hands. "About the house." "No," I cut her off. "About the fraud. The forged documents. The $450,000 loan. The defaulted payments. The forged signature. The unauthorized lien on my retirement account. That house." Her eyes flinched just slightly. "Emma, I know you're upset." "Upset." My voice cracked, but I caught it. "You faked my signature. You faked my employment. You put my entire career at risk." "It was for Madison," she said softly, like that made it better. "She needed help. You were doing well. It wasn't supposed to go this far." My stomach twisted. Then how far was it supposed to go? She avoided my gaze, looking at her folded hands. "We thought, with your name on it, she'd get approved. She just needed a push. A little support." "And the payments?" I asked. "You were 2 months behind. $32,000 behind." "We were figuring it out." "No, you weren't. You were hiding it." She reached across the table. I pulled my hands back. "We're family, Emma," she said, voice quivering. "Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for each other." That word, family, landed like acid on my skin. "You didn't ask me to sacrifice anything. You took. You lied. You used me. And you didn't say a word. That's not family. That's theft. Don't be so dramatic." I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. "Dramatic? I might lose my job. My license. Everything I've worked for. You took my name and stamped it on someone else's debt and called it love." Her eyes welled up. "You don't understand. Madison's not like you. He's fragile. She needed a home. After the breakup, she was a mess. She wasn't eating. She cried all night. So that's my problem now? You have stability, Emma," she said quietly. "She doesn't. He never did. We thought you'd understand." I stood up, heart pounding. "I understand that I've been your safety net. Your fixer. Your easy option. And I'm done." She stood too, tears on her cheeks. "Please don't do this. Don't blow this up. We can figure it out together. We're family." I stared at her, really stared, for the first time not as her daughter but as someone she'd wronged. "Then act like it," I said. "Because right now you're not my mother. You're just someone who committed fraud." I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. The chime on the porch jangled wildly in the wind. I drove without a destination, just watching streetlights smear across the windshield, trying to outrun the echo of her voice. "She's fragile. You have stability." As if my entire life, my career, my strength, my independence, had become an excuse for her to strip me of consent. Like success had somehow made me disposable. I pulled into an empty parking lot behind an old community center and sat there, engine humming, hands trembling around the steering wheel. The memory came without warning. I was 14. I'd won first place in the statewide writing competition, an essay about resilience after loss. It was printed in the newspaper. My English teacher cried reading it aloud. They even invited me to speak at the city youth conference. I told my parents, thinking, this is it. They'll finally be proud of me. But that same weekend, Madison had her ballet recital. She was 11. She had a solo. My parents never mentioned my award again. I stood on that stage and read my piece to an auditorium full of strangers. No family. No camera. Just me shaking behind a podium. Afterward, my teacher hugged me and said, "Your words matter." But all I could think about was my mom curling Madison's hair before the recital, whispering, "You're our little star." That's the moment I realized something that still sits like stone in my chest. I wasn't the daughter they celebrated. I was the daughter they counted on. When Madison crashed her car in high school, I was the one who stayed up all night helping her rewrite her college essay. When she got dumped by her first boyfriend, I skipped class to take her to the beach. When she failed out of her first semester, I helped my parents pay her tuition at a different school. Quietly. As I could. As I always could. And the more I gave, the more invisible I became. People like to say, the strong one doesn't need attention. But they're wrong. We do. We bleed just as hard. We just don't scream while we're doing it. I opened my phone and scrolled through old photos. Birthdays, holidays, family trips. Madison always center stage, surrounded by smiles and arms around her shoulders. Me usually off to the side holding the camera or the coat or the car keys. That night, I stayed in my car until sunrise. No tears. Just silence. I'd always believed I was building something. Respect, trust, family. But all along I was just the scaffolding. The structure they climbed up, leaned on, and eventually forgot. No. They'd bulldozed right through me without blinking. That realization didn't make me cry. It made me furious. Not loud, fire-spitting fury, but cold, focused, surgical rage. The kind that builds cases, not chaos. I wasn't going to yell. I was going to document. I was going to expose. And this time they were going to be the ones answering questions. Because the invisible child they had raised, she had finally been seen. And she was done being quiet. When I walked into Alex's office the next morning, he didn't greet me with a smile. He just handed me a folder. "You should sit down for this." I sat. He opened the folder and pointed to the first page. An email exchange between my mother and someone named Janice Pierce, an insurance agent. The subject line, "Policy transfer Emma Carter, dependent coverage." I pulled this from a subpoena request I expedited through a contact. "It's 3 years old," Alex said. "They used your information to enroll Madison in an extended healthcare plan under your group coverage through your firm." My heart dropped. But I never added Madison as a dependent. "No, but your mom did. She submitted the forms, forged the consent, and sent it straight to HR. They routed it through the carrier without a second glance. Apparently, someone in HR recognized your name and assumed it was valid. Nobody verified the signature." I felt sick. "So she's been using my health benefits? For at least 2 years. Dental, vision, mental health services, all billed under your policy." He paused. "That includes the therapist Madison saw after her breakup. The one your mom said nearly destroyed her emotionally." My hands balled into fists. It wasn't just one mistake. This was a pattern. A system. A deliberate, sustained fraud that went unnoticed because it came wrapped in a smile in a casserole dish. Alex flipped to the next document. "And that's not all. I pulled your financial report for the last 5 years. Look at this entry." He pointed to a $50,000 loan from a local credit union, collateralized by a retirement asset tied to my social security number. I blinked. "That's not mine. I never borrowed from Lincoln Credit Union." "Exactly. Your father did." He opened a scanned form. There was my name, typed in clean block letters, and a signature at the bottom. My signature. Only it wasn't mine. And this time it wasn't my mother's familiar flourish. It was different. Stiffer. Tighter. Practiced. "He copied yours," Alex said quietly. "But it's not her hand. It's his." I couldn't speak. My throat tightened as I stared at my father's name just above mine. He'd signed as the authorized co-borrower. He'd been there. He'd walked into the bank. Sat in that chair. Looked someone in the eye and lied. My father. The man who quietly repaired our fence every spring, who read the paper at breakfast without speaking much, who bought me coffee after every final exam in law school. He had forged my name. Alex sat across from me, his expression unreadable. "Emma, I know this is overwhelming, but we're looking at multiple counts of financial fraud. Unauthorized use of identity. Federal wire fraud. Possibly even elder exploitation depending on how they funded the down payment. I'm checking if your grandmother's trust was involved. I looked up sharply. Wait, Grandma Rose? She passed last year, right? Yeah. There's a wire transfer from her estate to Madison's joint account, just weeks before the house was purchased. It was labeled medical support. But it lines up almost exactly with the property's escrow payment. No, I whispered. She left that money for assisted living. She wanted to go to Rosewood Manor. She never made it to Rosewood. The room tilted. I remembered Madison casually mentioning last year that the probate stuff was such a headache, and that Mom and Dad handled it. I hadn't thought twice. I was too busy. I trusted them. Stupid. Alex stood and closed the folder. We have the makings of a case now. A real one. This isn't just one signature on a mortgage. It's an orchestrated pattern of deception. They've been using your name like a bank card. Every time they got desperate, they dipped into your future and figured you'd never notice. I leaned forward, burying my face in my hands. Why me? Alex's voice was calm. Because you're the responsible one. The successful one. The quiet one. And quiet people are easy to silence, until they decide not to be. I sat back, wiped my eyes and exhaled slowly. No more silence. I thought I'd already processed the worst of it. The signatures. The mortgage. The betrayal. But nothing prepared me for the moment I sat across from the ethics committee representative at the state bar office. The letter I had submitted voluntarily was now an active file under review. I wasn't being charged yet, but I was under investigation. My name flagged. My reputation tethered to a report I hadn't written, a loan I hadn't taken, and a family I no longer recognized. The investigator was cordial, even sympathetic. Ms. Carter, this is a standard procedure given the self-report. You're not being accused of wrongdoing at this stage. But until we've concluded our findings, we're placing a hold on all your current litigation licenses. Just like that, I was frozen. I couldn't practice. I couldn't represent clients. I couldn't earn. I nodded, holding it together until I stepped outside. The moment the elevator doors closed behind me, my legs gave out. I collapsed against the cold metal wall and pressed my forehead to my knees. Not from fear. From fury. Madison hadn't just endangered my bank account. She had threatened the very core of who I was. Every all-nighter, every exam, every case I'd fought tooth and nail to win. It was all suspended, pending an investigation into someone else's lie. When I got home, I ignored the dishes in the sink, the unopened mail, the voicemail notifications piling up. I opened my laptop and scrolled through photos of my law school graduation. There I was, center stage, diploma in hand, eyes shining. My parents on either side, beaming. My mom had cried that day, hugging me like I'd won a Nobel Prize. My dad had squeezed my shoulder and said, "We always knew you'd be the one." The one what? The one to sacrifice. The one to exploit. I shut the laptop and sat in silence, staring at the framed certificate on the wall. Admitted to practice law in the state of Illinois. A title I could lose. Because I trusted people who were supposed to protect me. My phone buzzed again. Madison. I let it ring. Then it buzzed again. This time a voicemail. I hesitated, then hit play. Emma, please don't be mad. I didn't know it would get this bad. Mom said everything was under control. I needed help. You don't understand what it's like to be in my shoes. You've always had it easy. The job, the apartment, the friends. I've been struggling. And when the realtor said we needed a co-signer, I thought maybe this is finally my chance. A fresh start. Mom said you'd be okay with it. You always are. I'm sorry if it went too far. But it wasn't just for me. It was for the whole family. I stared at the screen, my fingers curling. Easy? She thought I had it easy? Where was she when I worked weekends during law school to pay rent? When I stayed up 3 nights in a row preparing for the bar? When I sat alone on Christmas Eve drafting a case brief because no one in my family bothered to ask if I was coming home? Easy is what she was handed. What I had was earned, with bloodshot eyes and silence. Later that night, Alex came over with takeout and a folder of new developments. He didn't speak much at first, just handed me a beer and sat quietly on the couch. After a while he said, "I reviewed the lien paperwork again. If they try to drag this out in court, they might argue you gave implicit consent. We'll fight it, but it's going to get ugly. How ugly? You could lose your license. Or have it suspended for a year. You could be blacklisted by firms. And, he looked at me, if they countersue for defamation, they'll weaponize your entire childhood to make you look vindictive. I almost laughed. Vindictive? After what they did? He nodded. That's how it works. They'll say you were always jealous. That you hated Madison. That you wanted revenge. I stared out the window. And the truth. He smiled faintly. That's what we're about to prove. I didn't sleep that night either. But this time I wasn't numb. I was ready. The mediation room was sterile. White walls. A long mahogany table. Bottles of water lined up like soldiers. My heart thudded in my chest as I sat down across from them. My parents and Madison. My mother wore pearls like it was Sunday brunch. My father looked like he hadn't slept. Madison, she was in a pastel blazer, her makeup flawless, like she was here for a job interview. Alex leaned close. Stay calm. No matter what happens in there, don't react. Let the evidence speak. The mediator began the session, reviewing the claims: mortgage fraud, identity theft, financial exploitation. My mother's jaw tightened when the words were spoken out loud. My dad didn't look at me. Madison kept her hands folded neatly in her lap. Alex laid out the documents. Signature comparisons. The email trail. The unauthorized lien. The insurance records. It was irrefutable. My name had been used. My future gambled. My trust shattered. Then it was their turn. My mother cleared her throat. We never intended harm. We were just helping Madison get on her feet. He's been through a lot. We didn't think Emma would mind. She always wants to help. The mediator raised an eyebrow. You submitted legal documents under your daughter's name. Without her consent. My father spoke then, voice hoarse. It was desperate. We thought we'd pay it back before it caught up. We didn't know she'd get dragged into it like this. Like this. I wanted to scream. You dragged me into it. You tied my name to your debts, your choices, your mess. You didn't even blink. Then Madison spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost rehearsed. I didn't understand the documents. Mom handled everything. I just signed where she told me to. I thought it was legal. My head snapped toward her. You what? She wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't forge anything, she continued. It was Mom and Dad. They told me it was taken care of. That Emma had agreed. I never asked questions. I stared at her, stunned. She wasn't just dodging responsibility. She was throwing them under the bus. My mother turned to her, shocked. Madison. I'm not going to jail for this, she said coldly. You said you'd protect me. Well, protect me now. It was like watching a house implode from the inside. My parents' faces drained of color. My father's hand trembled. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. The mediator took notes silently. Alex leaned in. That's it. That's your case. Later, outside the building, I stood on the sidewalk as they exited one by one. My mother wouldn't look at me. My father hesitated. Emma. I held up a hand. Don't. Madison walked past like a stranger. Not a flicker of regret. Just relief. It was over. Not the legal part. That would drag on for months. But the illusion, the family, the hope that someday they'd see me, not as a safety net, not as a name to borrow, but as a daughter, that was gone. And strangely, that emptiness felt like freedom. 2 months later, I sat in my apartment, alone but not broken. The legal storm was still brewing. Paperwork, depositions, financial audits. But for once, I didn't feel like I was drowning in it. I felt clean. Like I'd stepped out of a fire and was finally able to breathe without the smoke. The state bar had completed their preliminary investigation. Thanks to Alex's meticulous timeline and the digital trail we'd uncovered, they ruled in my favor. No penalties. No suspensions. I was officially reinstated. They sent me a letter, sealed in a plain white envelope. I didn't cry when I opened it. I just exhaled. Fully. Deeply. Like someone who'd finally set down a burden they didn't realize they'd been carrying for decades. That night, I went through a box of old family keepsakes. Birthday cards, faded photos, notes written in my mother's perfect script. Always full of love, always signed with pride. And yet, underneath it all, was the lie that had always existed. We love you, but we'll take from you if we need to. I burned every one of those cards in the fireplace. Not out of hatred, but out of necessity. The next morning I walked into a local notary office with a folder tucked under my arm. The clerk glanced up. "Hi there. What are we notarizing today?" I slid the papers across the counter. Termination of financial co-liability. Revocation of durable power of attorney. Removal of familial financial access rights. And a cease and desist letter addressed to Robert and Lillian Carter. The woman blinked. "Family. Former," I said, offering a tight smile. I signed each document slowly, deliberately, letting the weight of every pen stroke land like the click of a lock turning shut. Every signature was a closing door, a wall built, not out of bitterness but out of the kind of boundary that should have existed years ago. On my way out, I dropped a certified letter in the outgoing mailbox. Inside was a final message addressed to my parents, with a full accounting of the damage they'd done, complete with copies of their forged signatures, the liens, the emails. At the top in bold I'd written, "This is the last document you will ever see with my name on it." No threats. No anger. Just fact. A week later I received a single envelope in return. No return address. Inside was a note in my mother's handwriting. "You've made your point. We'll stay out of your life now. But don't forget, you were once our daughter." Once. That word stuck with me. Not because it hurt but because it confirmed what I had always feared. To them I was only a daughter when I was useful. And now I was something else. A woman with her own name, her own life, and finally, her own story. Not one they wrote for me. One I wrote myself. The silence that followed wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. I stopped waiting for an apology. Stopped hoping they'd change. Some people never do. Some people just keep taking until you stop handing things over. I started going on walks again. I took my first vacation in 5 years. I began mentoring a young woman at my firm. A bright, fierce intern with eyes that reminded me of my own once before they were tired. One evening she asked me, "Do you believe in cutting people off? Like, your own family?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her and said, "I believe in protecting yourself. No matter who you're protecting yourself from." That night, I framed the letter from the state bar clearing my name. I hung it in my office right next to my law degree. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that sometimes the most powerful signature you'll ever give is the one that says, "Never again."